Before we start, here's something that might surprise you. The food Americans proudly call French fries might not actually be French at all. In fact, the strongest historical evidence points somewhere else, entirely small villages along the Meuse River in what is now Belgium. And the reason the world calls them French has less to do with cuisine and more to do with language, war, and a simple misunderstanding during World War I. Now imagine this for a moment. You're sitting in a restaurant, eating a basket of crispy fries. They look incredibly simple, just potatoes, oil, and a little salt. But behind that golden crunch is a story stretching across continents, wars, migrations, and centuries of food culture. The truth behind that story is far more fascinating than most people realize. Because French fries were never just fast food. They were survival food. They were street food. They were war food. And eventually, they became one of the most popular foods on earth. So the real question isn't just who invented French fries. The real question is how a simple survival trick used by villagers centuries ago turned into one of the most famous foods in human history. And even more interesting, why does the entire world still give credit to the wrong country? To understand the story properly, we have to go far back in time, long before fast food chains existed, before restaurants served fries on plates, and even before Europe truly understood what a potato was. Because the story of French fries actually begins thousands of miles away from Europe, high in the mountains of South America. Long before Europeans ever heard of potatoes, the crop was already being cultivated by indigenous civilizations in the Andes region. For thousands of years, the potato served as a staple food for societies like the Inca civilization. These communities learned how to grow, store, and cook potatoes in many different ways. For them, the potato wasn't just food, it was survival. Everything changed in the 1500s when Spanish explorers arrived in South America. They encountered the potato and eventually brought it back to Europe. At first, Europeans didn't trust this strange underground vegetable. Many people believed it might be poisonous. Others thought it was unhealthy or dangerous to eat. In several regions, potatoes were only fed to animals rather than people. But over time, something remarkable happened. Farmers discovered that potatoes were extremely efficient crops. They were easy to grow, produced large harvests, and provided a lot of calories from small pieces of land. Gradually, the potato spread across Europe, transforming agriculture and everyday diets. Eventually, the potato reached the region where the story of French fries truly begins, the Meuse Valley. This region runs through what is now Belgium and includes towns like Namur, Dinant, and Andin. During the late 1600s and early 1700s, life in these villages was simple and often difficult. People relied heavily on the nearby Meuse River for food. Their main source of protein came from small river fish. Villagers often caught these fish, sliced them into thin pieces, and fried them in hot fat. It was a common and practical cooking method that created crispy, satisfying meals. But every winter, something dramatic happened. The river froze. When the Meuse River froze during the cold months, fishing became impossible. Suddenly, the villagers lost one of their main food sources. With limited options available, people had to improvise in order to survive. According to long-standing Belgian food traditions, villagers began cutting potatoes into thin strips shaped like the small fish they normally fried. They then cooked the potatoes in hot oil using the exact same technique they used for frying fish. This simple idea may have created the earliest version of what we now recognize as French fries. At the time, no one thought they were inventing something world-changing. It was simply a practical solution during a difficult winter. Potatoes were available, oil was available, and frying was already a familiar cooking method. But sometimes the simplest discoveries turn out to be the most powerful. When potatoes are fried properly, something almost magical happens. The outside becomes golden and crispy while the inside stays soft and fluffy. That contrast of textures creates a taste experience that humans naturally love. Over time, villagers realized that fried potatoes were not just a substitute for fish, they were delicious on their own. Gradually, fried potato strips became a common food across Belgium. Street vendors began selling them in paper cones. People ate them with sauces and seasonings. Locally, they were known as pommes frites, a French phrase that simply means fried potatoes. But this is where the story becomes complicated. Although Belgium strongly claims the invention of fries, France also appears in the historical timeline. In the late 1700s, street vendors in Paris were already selling fried potato snacks to people walking across bridges, like the famous Pont Neuf. These fried potatoes became popular among everyday citizens, especially during the period leading up to the French Revolution. Because of this, historians still debate whether Belgium invented fries first or whether France helped popularize them earlier. The exact origin remains difficult to prove with absolute certainty. However, many modern food historians believe the Belgian origin story is the most likely explanation. What is clear is that fried potatoes became deeply connected to Belgian culture. Across the country, small fry stands known as friteries began appearing in towns and cities. These stands specialized entirely in serving fries, often with dozens of different sauces. In Belgium, fries were never just a side dish, they were a national comfort food. Yet despite this strong cultural connection, the rest of the world knows them by a completely different name: French fries. That unusual name didn't come from chefs or cookbooks, it came from soldiers. To understand how this happened, we need to move forward in time to the early 20th century, when Europe was facing one of the largest conflicts in human history, World War I in 1914. The war spread across the continent, and eventually American troops arrived in Europe to support the Allied forces. Many of these soldiers were stationed in Belgium. While interacting with local communities, American soldiers discovered something they had never seen before: crispy fried potato sticks, served by Belgian villagers and soldiers. The soldiers loved them immediately. The fries were hot, salty, filling, and easy to eat. For young troops far from home, this simple food quickly became a favorite. But here is where a small misunderstanding changed food history forever. The southern region of Belgium, known as Wallonia, primarily speaks French. Many Belgian soldiers and civilians communicated in French as well. When American soldiers asked locals about the fried potatoes, they heard French being spoken all around them. Naturally, they assumed the food itself was French, so the soldiers started calling the dish French fries. When the war ended and American troops returned home, they brought both the food and the name back with them. Restaurants in the United States soon began serving French fried potatoes, and eventually the name shortened to simply French fries. From that moment on, the name stuck. What happened next transformed fries from a regional European snack into a global food phenomenon. The United States adopted fries enthusiastically. Restaurants experimented with cooking methods, cutting techniques, and serving styles. Over time, the process became more efficient. Machines were invented to slice potatoes quickly. Industrial freezing methods allowed fries to be stored and transported easily. This allowed restaurants and food companies to produce fries on a massive scale. By the mid-20th century, fries were everywhere in American diners, drive-in restaurants, sports stadiums, and school cafeterias. Eventually, fast food chains turned them into one of the most recognizable foods on the planet. Once fries became a staple of American fast food culture, they began spreading across the world. Every country adopted them, but adapted them slightly to match local tastes. In the United States, fries are most commonly eaten with ketchup. In Belgium, mayonnaise remains the classic topping. In the United Kingdom, fries are known as chips and are often served with fried fish. In Canada, fries evolved into the famous dish poutine, where they are topped with cheese curds and gravy. The same simple potato became dozens of different cultural dishes. Yet Belgium has never stopped defending its claim as the true birthplace of fries. In fact, Belgian fry culture is so important that the country even celebrates traditional fry stands as part of its national culinary heritage. Authentic Belgian fries are often cooked using a specific technique known as double frying. First, the potatoes are fried at a lower temperature to cook the inside. Then they are fried again at a higher temperature to create the crispy outer layer. This process produces the perfect combination of a crunchy exterior and a soft interior. Once you understand this method, you realize something surprising. French fries may look simple, but making them perfectly is actually a precise cooking process, and perhaps that is why fries have remained popular for centuries. They satisfy something universal in human taste: crispy texture, warm comfort, and a balance of salt and starch that people instinctively enjoy. But the biggest irony of all remains the name. A dish most likely invented in Belgian villages, named after France, popularized by American soldier, and loved by people in almost every country on earth. That is the strange and fascinating journey of the French fry, from frozen rivers in rural villages to global fast food menus, from a survival trick used during harsh winters, to a cultural icon eaten billions of times every year. Every basket of fries carries that history inside it, a story shaped by farmers who grew potatoes, villagers who improvised during winter, soldiers who carried the dish across oceans, and restaurants that turned it into a worldwide favorite. And the next time you open a box of fries, Take a moment to think about that journey, because you're not just eating a snack, you're tasting centuries of food history. And here's the real question that still makes historians smile. Are they really French fries? Or are they secretly Belgian all along? If you enjoy discovering the real stories behind the foods we eat every day, the hidden histories, surprising facts, and cultural twists that shape our meals, then make sure you stay with this channel, because food history is full of stories just like this, and the next one might completely change the way you look at what's on your plate.